This story begins on a dark and stormy night where you, the viewer, were horribly, horribly lied to. Does this dark and stormy future lead to murder most foul? Hello everybody, I'm Art, and welcome to another episode of Glacial Awakening. And no, of course it does not. The lie I was speaking of just means we are not actually going to be pursuing RF power today like I had originally planned. Because in looking in the quest book at chapter 4, I realized that there's something I'm wildly unfamiliar with and possibly interesting to do. And that's the mystical ore pour from Hearth Well. Because let me tell you, this is a weird one. So I figured why not get into the deep end of dealing with Hearth Well's power as well as its ore production and get away from coring if I can. But this is possibly fraught with peril because this is so far into stuff I don't know how it works. It's going to be interesting to see if I can even automate it or not. But the first thing we need to do any of this is create a power crystal, which is the power source for all of Hearth Well's stuff. And if you go through this, it tells you that it requires 3 different pieces: the nucleus, the relays, and the screen. And that these things all have different attributes. They have different materials, as it shows here, which of course none of these mouse over and you can't get them from here, but it does list them over here. And it shows you generally how it works. What you're going to find is it doesn't tell you what any of those are values-wise. So I'm going to put a link to Reddit where somebody broke all of this out for y'all. But this is the first thing we need to do. In looking at the list, it looks like the best option for making the nucleus is either a diamond or an imprisoned light. The diamond gives a lot more range, a little bit more power, but a lot less purity, and the imprisoned light gives no range, a little less power, and a lot more purity. Purity affecting how much is lost in transmission. So I think I'm probably going to go with the diamond just for range. The next one is the relay. The best one there is the soulstone block, which gives a ton of power. But as a reminder, these can be kind of a pain to make because it requires a bunch of metal diamond, which I did make because I believe you can core straight into this, but I can't remember, I may have just made a bunch of soul dust, which is just a bunch of smashed soul sand, and then crystal catalyst, which is just a bunch of shards. So that's not too bad other than the fact that we need to make 18 of them because we need 2 blocks. And then for the screens, there's a whole bunch of options, but the outright winner is the nether crystal block for power and purity. Alternatively, you could potentially use packed ice, which gives a little bit less purity, but might be easier to do. Since I can actually make this with normal ice inside the hydraulic press, and I can make normal ice in the freezer. So I think I'm actually going to do the packed ice because that's the cheaper solution. Or if I can just learn to read JEI, snow can just be turned directly into packed ice in the freezer. Alright, so I've got everything loaded in here, the packed ice, the soul steel blocks, and the diamond. And now we can see the crystal is Shiny Souls Icy with currently 2,000 power out of a total of 8,000, which is a fair chunk. Only 6 range and only 64% purity though, because the purity is kind of tanked by the diamond and the packed ice. But that should probably be fine for now. And to use these, you just place them on the ground like that, and they pop up in the air and show you how much power they have left. And you can pick them right back up. That said, we now actually need to be able to recharge these and, power this one up to its complete maximum. And this is, of course, where things get a bit uglier because now we need to make a charger with a multi-block system here. And making the charger is just a bunch of Hearth Well stuff we've already done. That said, I wish it would tell us what all of the stuff in the frame for the multi-block itself was because I don't see a list here. But we can visualize it, but I'm assuming this is Onyx and whatever the white version of Onyx is. But for now, I think I'm just going to go put it in this spot right here and make an ugly mess out of my base where I really wanted to place a building. But we're not quite ready for that yet anyway, so we'll make room for this stuff later. Oh, and while I was putting down these crystal blocks, I realized it does show me in here what all we actually need, so it's Moonstone that we're missing. And in case you've forgotten how these blocks work from Hearth Well, it's just usually stone surrounding a shard, so they're pretty easy to make. Alright, and now we've got the evil Imperial probe droid built to go along with the Sith smithery back there. So let's go into how this works real fast. So to use this, you just right-click the crystal into the charger, it drops it down there. To charge it up, you just throw anything that it can consume down onto here. One thing that it can consume are the mysterious leaves. Now the leaves aren't necessarily the best power source for this, but they're the one we most easily have on hand and have tons of thanks to our bonsai pods back over there. So that's what I'm going to use for now. That said, you can't easily check how much power it has while it's in the charger, and any excess fuel you toss in just gets consumed and used up. I don't know how you automate this yet. Maybe you can do it with the comparator, but given that the slots around it are filled up with small gravity blocks, I don't know how you get a comparator in there to test that. So I don't know. We're gonna have to figure this out long term, I guess. But if you just toss a whole bunch of blocks down here like this, they just constantly swirl around and make a really, really annoying noise. A faster source of recharging would be imprisoned lights from these light collectors. If I could find a way to automate those too, that would be great. I have a little more than a stack inside my crate over there, which I could use if I really want to speed up this process. But we don't need a ton of power to run this, I don't believe. And now that we have power for Hearth Well, now we can try to actually make the ore puller. And the ore puller is a large multi-block structure that looks kind of like this. Although it doesn't actually show me where it is, but I assume it's under the liquid souls that are here in the center. And it requires quite a few parts. And the taller that you make this, the faster it will work. I believe it's 2.5 minutes at the minimum height here on the left, but you can supposedly get it down to 1 ore per tick at the max height of 60. But it requires a bunch of these heavy protection blocks. And this is where things get expensive. The mystical ore puller by itself isn't too bad to make. The main thing is it requires a simple machine chassis, which we can now make, and a bunch of steel, and then gravity and anti-gravity blocks. Anti-gravity blocks is being a slight variant on the gravity block, but we also need these heat blocks, which thankfully aren't expensive. It's just a bunch of clay, but we need a bunch of these heavy protection blocks. And then thankfully the recipe makes 4 at a time, but it requires a ton of heavy ingots because it requires these 4 here, as well as another 9 here, and then 4 soul steel ingots. So I'm obviously going to start with the minimum height to see how this works before we build it up any taller. Alright, so while I was making the blaze powder for the heavy lumps that I have to make for the ingots, which was really, really super tedious, I remember that this existed, the combustion collector from Sky Resources 2. As you finish this, instead of having to constantly break this block, reload it, hit the button again, you can just toss everything in, and when they finish, they'll go into the combustion collector, which has an inventory. So you can just keep triggering it, and then you're just dependent on how fast does this regenerate its power, and how fast does it chew up its fuel, basically. So that actually made this a lot less tedious to deal with. You still have to manually load everything in, and there's still no easy way to automate that, at least at the point that I'm at, but it's at least a step in the right direction. Okay, so I've got the visualizer set up, I've got everything made. I made barely just enough of soulstone and the heavy ingots to actually get this made at the base level, so we won't worry about expanding it for now until I get a better idea what I'm doing. Okay, so I think I've got this set up correctly, and if I understand properly, once I put the energy crystal down, it should just start generating ores between the light amplifiers and the liquid souls down there. I'm not sure how we're going to extract them yet. I might try a gravity block to pull them out and put them in a hopper or something, but we need to see how this works first though. So I guess let's power it up and see how this goes and see if it works. 8125 and watch for power to get pulled out of it. Alright, so it's working currently so far, but it's a pain to get the items out of it because you have to forcibly sink down into this because you normally stand right on top of it. I have to like crouch down to get them. But it does work, and it's actually giving me ores that I wasn't expecting, like the glowstone ore that's sitting in my hand there. So I need to spend some time and figure out how to try to extract stuff out of this. I've got an idea, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm currently lacking a lot of the other tools I could use to do this with. Alright, so I got it figured out. The first thing I tried didn't work, that was unfortunate. What I had attempted was to use the collector from Inspirations, which can gather things, kind of the opposite of a dropper or a dispenser. When past a redstone signal pulls things in either from an inventory or from the air, but apparently it drops it straight into liquid souls and not into the air, so I couldn't pull it out even with an anti-gravity block, so that was unfortunate. But that led me to discovering the hopper enhancement from Nature's Aura, which increases the range of a hopper. So I was able to put the hopper on the outside, slap that on top of it, and it pulls things straight out of the pool now and dumps them in that chest. The flip side is this uses up aura to do this, but since I already have to recharge the crystal anyways, also throwing down an ancient sapling once in a while to recharge the aura in the area is not really a problem. But as you can see, this is starting to tick down at a fairly decent rate now. I can probably just let it run for a while and it'll be fine. And the chest is slowly starting to fill up with some more. We're getting some coal ore, which is nice because that's something we were completely unable to get. We've been having to convert charcoal. We're getting emerald ore, which we didn't really have emeralds before other than the 1 or 2 I found in astral sorcery temples. And then we're also getting quartz and glowstone, which were kind of a pain to make. So this is all really, really positive. That said, what I really should actually do is not dump them into a chest, but dump them into an Arcane Archives chest, via a brazier. I should be tossing them into a fire there and having this linked up to my drawer system to store everything that way. So let me go make another brazier and let me go find a way to punch this in through the wall to connect it to my drawer network. I may need to make a slave first. Alright, so I think I've got this all set up now. I've got the brazier under the hopper, that all is working fine. I've got the radiant chest here in my kitchen. This is just the only place I could fit it in, and this is where it's sending it all to. Unless we get lucky, you won't see it actually bounce through here, but this is where it's getting entered in. We punch a hole through right here. You can see it's feeding in from a conduit into the controller slave. Because right here I have frame trim that I put in way back a bunch of episodes ago to feed into my kitchen. So that's all able to connect up right there. That's the only really clean spot I could find to put this, at least in my current layout. I probably, if I expand out that way, I could move it too or something like that. But for now, I've just got it here, which means anything that pops in that doesn't fit will show up in that chest and I can go pull it out there anyways. So that actually worked out really well. Now, I'm not going to automatically process this stuff for now, because I could send this all straight down to my grinder and then maybe hook up the manufactory to the end process there and go process it all into ingots immediately. I'm actually going to hold off on that until we get to AE2 for now, because I may not even want to do all of that stuff, because I know I need like iron ore for certain things, and I'm just going to leave those unprocessed until I need them, which is fine. So this is actually pretty good progress, because now I've got a low effort way of basically getting free resources, and I don't actually have to do coring all that much anymore, you know, until I decide to make that tower bigger. But yeah, I still need to figure out how to automate power for it, because I definitely don't have that done. I'm not sure how you would go about doing that. I don't have block placers or anything right now, so I might have to wait until we get to actually additions, and I'm not even confident I can do it then. There's gotta be a way. But I've done some quick Googling on this, like almost nobody has admitted to actually really using Hearth Well. So I might have to figure this one out on my own. But I've got some time, it's not that pressing, and frankly it's not that hard to recharge it, and I have to place the ancient saplings from time to time anyways. So not the end of the world. We'll eventually get a laser base going, and that just runs off of RF power and will be even easier to use, but we'll get there. Anyhow, if you found this episode interesting or entertaining, please consider leaving a like or subscribing if you're new. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.